So we're in my garage, which is our toy room. And this is where I stash my aged urine, which has an odor, which is why I keep the covers. This kind of keeps it down. And I like to open the lockers and open the garage door every now and then so that it airs out. Aged urine in user therapy, urine therapy communities, they call it evolved urine. They like that term, aged urine. I think because people are afraid of the word age because we don't like aging. It's a little bit scarier. It's fermented urine. That's another way it's termed. So this is where I keep it. And again, it's odoriferous. In the aging process, it's off-gassing ammonia. So for those of you who know the smell of ammonia, or you know the smell like when you're walking by a place where there's not good sanitation and you get that urine smell, it can go through a phase like that. Right now, it's not that smell. It's different. I've had people come in here when I'm aging a lot and say it smells like there's a dead animal. So FYI, it's not for a lot of people. It's a wild smell. It's to me a primal smell. And what I have learned about simply the smell of aged urine is that the smell itself reawakens your olfactory bulb. One of the things that a lot of people don't know, although we experience a little bit of this in COVID, is that anosmia, or the loss of sense of smell, is one of the key signs that the body's dying.
So how long have you been aging this urine for?
Well, if we look at some of the dates, like this one's August 22, and I'm not super great at labeling, and you can see I have a lot of different jars. And then I do have one plastic container, so I won't actually drink this. I might use that for like a foot soak or something like that. I just ran out of glass, but I try to age with glass. This is kind of wild. The colors of aged urine changes. So the older it is, like one of the ways you can tell how old urine is by the color. So you can see from the color here, this is more of like on the way to like Coca-Cola colored. And often like the way that I learned about it was via, and smell that. Like it smells a little, I know it's gross to smell someone else's aged urine, but it smells funky, but it's different.
Strong.
Can you feel how it?
Definitely different.
And can you feel how it actually starts to clear your sinus channels?
Mm-hmm, that's true. It's potent.
And it starts to like waken stuff up, kind of like smelling salts were used.
Mm-hmm.
So I age it in here. Sometimes what grows on the bottom is kind of like an ormus, or for those of you who make kombucha, like a fungus. And that is something that like just shows you that you have fungus in your body, right? Which is a sign there, like that's a deeper Coca-Cola colored, which, well, or maybe it's a little bit the same. You can see in the bottom here, there's those crystals. Some people say they're stem cells. We don't really have a good science. We have no science really on this stuff as far as like if you go and search the archives, which is a shame because urine is literally the most studied substance that scientists looking under, or even doctors just looking under urine samples. But we don't have studies on aged urine. What we do know is from just using an oxidation reduction potential meter, an ORP, is that this stuff goes to negative 200, which means it's like one of the strongest free radical eaters in the body. It's one of the strongest antioxidants. Like it far exceeds any medicinal antioxidants, any of those like plant medicines that are sold to you in the store and supplements as antioxidants. This is far, far greater than that. And what does that mean? It means that wherever there's free radicals in your body, that this will just like scavenge and it'll actually peel off the biofilms from dysbiotic microbes. It'll actually shift chronic inflammation and start to reduce the inflammation in the body.
So how do I know when to use aged urine versus fresh urine?
In the user communities, and this is where I look to for answers, is who are the people who have been using it the longest and what are they currently doing? And what we find in those communities is there's a lot of variability. A lot of people go in phases where, everyone starts with fresh because that's all you've got. And it takes 9 months to get a mature aged urine, just like in utero, it's a 9-month cycle. And that's where you get that more of a cola brown and way less smell. It doesn't smell like ammonia anymore. It smells for some people, it even will smell sweet. And so for a lot of people that have aged urine, they will use aged urine for skin massage, and it's much more like using an oil. And you feel what's called in Ayurvedic medicine, svastha, which means seated in yourself. So it actually starts to purify non-self out. And what does that mean? Well, if you have a lot of emotional trauma, it'll start to process the trauma. If you have a lot of physical toxins, or say you have weight to lose because you're not at your ideal weight, it'll start to literally digest that, so that what is then left is like ultimately like, yeah, like I'm strong, I'm like tight in terms of my physiology, like I'm tightened up. I don't mean like tight like strong, but tight just like I'm firm, I'm fit, I'm relaxed in myself, I'm at home. Literally, svasana means that you are at home in yourself. Other people use age, like I use it in eyes. I love it in eyes. I love it as a nasya in nose. I like it in my ears. I like to swish it as like a mouth, like how people use coconut oil in the mouth, and it'll literally pull the dysbiosis out of the mouth. The other thing is animals love it. And this is one of the things that I notice, like animals are dispelled by chemicals, or dispelled by even pheromones of other animals that are sick. So like the sicker a person is, usually, unless it's like if you own the dog and you're sick, your dog will come and love on you. But if a dog encounters another dog that's sick, it'll actually move away from that animal. With urine therapy, if I rub aged urine on my body, my dog will come and lick it off. And she wants the salt, but she also uses it to know me, right? So she's using it to check in. If we look at fertility, people will use aged urine. They'll just have like not a lot. It's like less than like a half an ounce of each other's aged urine if they're trying to conceive, because what it does is it starts to mix the biochemistries before you actually conceive a new life, right? And it actually will help purify and assimilate. It gives the physiologies a lot of feedback on the way to procreation. So there's like literally a gazillion uses. Say you have a burn or a cut or a bruise and you want to accelerate the healing process, you're going to go to aged before fresh if you have it, because it's infinitely more potent in the, see, like dudes like this, they love it. They love the smell. And to me, that means it's mammalian. It's not, it's a habit that's been cultured out of us. In terms of like how else someone might use it, say we've had people with bone fractures that have had surgeries. Because urine can heal the skin, you can wrap, like even post-surgery, like even over stitches, like people will use it directly, like put it on a wool sock, the aged, and then wrap it in a wool sock, and then bind it so that overnight it's just soaking in that. And we've seen just healing, even with people over 60, over 70, heal from like very bad accidents much, much more quickly than if they were not to have used aged urine. So yeah, it's a pretty freaking primal world out there. What I notice is you stop doubting yourself. You basically end your relationship with consumer culture. And it doesn't mean you can't buy whatever you want. You actually have a lot more money because it becomes a source of hydration. It becomes a source of nutrition because of the amino acids. It's way easier to intermittent fast. And so because of that, you actually have a lot more of a openness in the body. What in yoga we call both sukha of clean space and also akasha of just clear space. You have so much more spaciousness. You're able to then direct your energy a lot more specifically, and you're able to buy what you want because you're not wasting money on all the other unessential stuff that's just actually clogging yourself and kind of blocking you from what you really want. So you're able to become a much more intelligent, deep materialist is what I would call it. And because of that, you're so much less able to be sold to, whether you're being sold a pharmaceutical or even a vaccination, or whether you're being sold just more stuff that is trying to fill an empty void inside. That pattern really goes away. And what we find is with aged urine in the Club Thrive community is that people that have really deep long-term problems, whether it's autoimmune, whether it's even like deep sinus, like sinusitis or rhinitis, mouth sores, even constipation, that using even small amounts of the aged urine, it just accelerates their healing process.
Mm-hmm. How do you deal with people thinking it's weird or judging you for doing aged urine?
Yeah, so urine therapy, and particularly aged urine therapy, is a very advanced primal habit, meaning it's really only for about like 1% of the people who are going to be watching this video. And so to understand if you're in the 99%, just to understand that it's always there for you. And it might make certain things historically, as you start to think about human history, like how did we cross the desert? Like if the biblical stories are somewhat reflective of that humans had issues with survival in deserts and crossings and really being cast out of communities, that we had a different way of living before agriculture, it starts to awaken and like, oh yeah, how did we get from point A to point B when there was no water in between? All of a sudden we start to understand that we have our own water cycle. If we look at the antibiotic, antifungal, antimicrobial, antiviral properties of aged urine, we start to understand how we fought disease before pharmaceuticals. So to some degree, there can be just this level of open-mindedness. In the ancient Vedic text, there's a text about 2,000 years ago that really delineates 9 different types of animal urine and how they were all used by humans, including human urine. So if we can just take a little bit of a more scientific or objective or historical view, what that can do is it can take that 1% of us and it can actually, or the 99% of us that are less informed, and it can start to just educate us, right? It's like, oh wait, we've been trained to think it's disgusting. If we look at children are fascinated by their own urine. They want to taste it. They want to spray it. They want to pee in the bathtub, right? That's a very natural impulse to bathe in your own pee. If we look at for people's culture, they were naturally like peeing and putting it all over their body. Mexican women would use it to stop their hair from graying, right? So if we can actually be a little bit more educated about it, what can happen at that point is then we can say, well, what habits are actually intrinsic to my physiology that strengthen my physiology? What habits have been trained out of me so that someone else can have power or control over my behaviors in modern times? How that shows up is as a consumer, right? So how can the powers that be or the beliefs or the cultures that be actually weaken me from my own self-empowerment? And how can I just actually get a little bit curious in that? And like one of the ways that's a lot more accessible to people is through just simply fasting, because we're so sold as consumers to hyper consume. And as we start to detox and experience longer fasting times, that can be so self-empowering that we might then start to be able to go from that very basic habit into some of the more advanced primal habits, of which urine therapy is a very advanced primal habit.